Psalm 137 is an extremely important psalm in the lives of our Jewish brothers and sisters. And as I have spent a great deal of time with it over the last several weeks, I have come to believe that it can be important in our lives as well. I have come to believe that in order to understand how, let us first look at what it means in Judaism. Psalm 137 is so important in Judaism that it is an integral part, the centerpiece even, for one of their major holidays. ReformedJudaism.org describes the psalm in this way. Every major ancient holiday on the Jewish calendar is ultimately about joy, except for one. On this day, Tisha B'Av, the 9th of the Hebrew month of Av, it is said that a series of major tragedies to the Jewish people occurred, including the destruction of the first and the second temples. It is a day of mourning for getting kicked out of the land of Israel, for the destruction of Jerusalem, and the medieval expulsions from various lands. It is said that Tisha B'Av was the day it all went down, literally. Sacred sites, entire communities, utterly destroyed. Tisha B'Av is the day of mourning when the Jewish people acknowledge that no, life is not all butterflies and roses, and yes, this tribe has been through some serious suffering. Rabbi Neil Gold, in an article on myjewishlearning.com, describes Psalm 137 in this way. Psalm 137 is a lament of longing for a community torn from home. In 586 BCE, the Babylonian Empire conquered Jerusalem, destroyed the first temple that had been built by King Solomon, and uprooted large numbers of people, deporting them hundreds of miles to the east. This famous psalm is one read on the eve of Tisha B'Av, which commemorates the destruction of both temples. It opens the liturgy and sets the tone for an emotionally challenging holiday. The liturgy of Tisha B'Av includes a wide array of poems of sorrow and mourning, giving voice to the themes of exile and longing. This ancient psalm captures the pain of the exile from the land of Israel. It is a day of intense and communal mourning. So it seems to me that Tisha B'Av is a holiday on the Jewish calendar where they intentionally and purposefully give themselves the freedom to remember, to grieve, and to express fully their grief and sorrow, both individually and communally across history, time, and space. What a beautiful gift they give to themselves and each other. Now, I realize that both sacred text and the topic today can be difficult and can touch tender places within us. And that you might be thinking, why in the world would anyone choose this text for a meditation? That was my question too when Spirit brought it to me. In fact, that was my question repeatedly as I was preparing the sermon. Initially, I blamed it on the day job, in which part of my work is to facilitate intentional grieving groups. But in the end, I knew I needed to follow Spirit's lead. I understand that grief is a tender topic, and not one most of us want to talk about or listen to. Yet, isn't this precisely why we need to? Without knowing it, many people these days are living with the impacts of grief, grieving the loss of family and friends, jobs, relationships, identities, financial stability, health, safety, and life as we knew it prior to the spring of 2019. And the effects are really beginning to show up in our daily lives. People are experiencing a kind of brain fog that shows up in ways that affect our memory, our ability to focus or concentrate, and our ability to retrieve common words. Our responses to questions are delayed. We are zoning out. we are more easily irritated and overwhelmed. We are experiencing fatigue, depression, anxiety, and burnout at new levels. We don't feel like we have the time or the brain power to figure out what is happening within ourselves or what we need to do to make things better. At least part of that is because we are grieving and don't realize it. And because when we are grieving, the creative, thinking, problem-solving part of our brains are often offline, shut down, or just not working properly. You get the idea. So today, our text today has a powerful message that teaches us about grief and some healthy ways to freely express it, process it, and heal it. By the Rivers of Babylon reminds us that water and nature are important for our healing. Water is often very therapeutic for people, and it is especially important to hydrate. There we sat down. Get out into nature, stay for a while, sit with your grief. Don't try to avoid it, or you might get stuck in it. There we cried and cried. Allow yourself to cry and cry, even if you don't really know or understand what you're crying about or why. Let it out as much and often as you want, and for as long as you need to. Trust that there is healing in those tears. Feel your feelings. Express them as intensely as you need to. Find healthy ways to do that. It keeps them from getting bottled up, and it moves them through your body. Brene Brown says we can't selectively numb emotions, which means if you numb the pain and the grief, the fear and disappointment that you're feeling, then you're also numbing joy and gratitude and happiness, etc. When we remembered Zion for the Jewish people can refer to Jerusalem and the temple, or as a symbol of God's presence. It can be healing to remember, to tell and hear stories about our loved ones. One way of expressing grief and feelings. It can be healing to remember God's presence in the midst of grief, or to express feelings of God's absence, instead of keeping that to ourselves. We hung up our harps. The things that bring us joy or ways of expressing our creativity are often forgotten or put in the corner when we're experiencing grief, which can add to our grief. We stop listening to music, which reminds me of the song American Pie, the day the music died. Like, I can't even imagine, for me, as important as music is for me, like a day that music died, like that would be extremely, I would grieve that a lot. Music and creativity can help us process and express our grief that we might not have words for or access to otherwise. Our captors demanded that we sing a happy song. Our culture often gives us little time to grieve before expecting us to get over it and move on. It can be rare to find people who give us the freedom to grieve in our own way and in our own time, and who are able to sit with us in our pain and not try to fix it for us. How could we ever sing God's song in a foreign land? According to Rabbi Neil Gold, the temple in Jerusalem was the place where God and the people found great intimacy. The memory of this closeness is what Tisha B'Av is ultimately about, a longing for the intimacy with God that worship evoked in the temple. Sometimes, amid our grief, we can sing songs to the God of our understanding and can continue to worship and find meaning, comfort, and strength in continued connection or intimacy with God. And sometimes we can't. Depending on the circumstances, we might even be angry with God. All of these feelings are valid, and it's important that we allow ourselves to feel these feelings without judgment. If I ever forget you. Somewhere along the way, we have been taught that if we begin to have moments of joy, then somehow we are forgetting to remember what we have lost or who we have lost. That to laugh or to feel a moment of joy somehow dishonors or disrespects the person, pet, or thing we have lost. Yet many people don't realize that it is possible to hold both feelings at once, grief and joy. Rituals like altars, like All Saints' Days or Tisha B'Av, can be helpful in remembering, expressing, and processing our grief all at the same time. Remembering the fall and the people who tore it down. In this section, the psalmist and the Jewish people are angry. They're asking for payback or retribution. Anger is a valid response as well as a normal part of the grief process. Most people experience anger somewhere in the grief process, and often more than once. Because the stages of grief, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, are not linear. While this last section is graphic and often left out of sermons or meditation because it is so graphic, I love that this section is here because it reminds us that anger is not only a valid response, but it is important that it be expressed fully, but in healthy ways and in ways that do not harm ourselves, property, or others, including animals. And it shows us in the last sentence about babies, and I won't repeat what it really says, but like if we let our anger, if we don't express our anger fully in healthy ways, like we can get upset to the point where we would even harm children. In this section, the psalmist is expressing exactly what they are thinking and how they are feeling, both individually and collectively as a people. And they are being very real and authentic about it and not holding back. But they are only saying the words, not acting on them. And they are being as real as possible with God and telling God these things and getting it out of their system. Yet they are expressing their anger to God and not at somebody else. And I don't know about you, but I believe God is big enough to handle our most intense anger, even if it is God that we are angry with. To be able to simply name what we are feeling and or what is causing the feeling will, at the very least, help the feeling to subside, and at best, to go away completely. Therefore, the way anger is expressed in our text can be a healthy way to move through both grief and anger. Feeling and expressing these feelings so intensely and fully can help us empathize with other oppressed peoples, and understand how suffering and oppression can easily translate into rage. The seething hurt behind these sentiments makes this passage extremely and uncomfortably powerful. In closing, I will leave you with this. If you are experiencing grief, then allow yourselves to be free to grieve in ways that are helpful for you and in ways that fit what you need. Give yourself permission to allow grieving to take as long as it takes. Be gentle and kind to yourselves. Listen to the wisdom of your body. It will often need more rest. Give your body what it needs. Ask for help when you need it. Exercise, hydrate, and get outdoors. It will help move the grief through your body so that it will not get stuck there, and it will assist you in processing your grief, feeling your feelings, and finding healthy ways to express them fully. Consider getting professional help with processing your grief. Many people are grieving multiple losses at once. Know that it may take you longer to do everyday activities. Surround yourself with people who will support you in the ways that are life-giving for you. And last but not least, remember to breathe. Deep breaths multiple times a day. Thank you.